Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Property Manager, episode number 22. Today is May 27th, 2020. We're coming to you live from the Own Buffalo Studios, Own Buffalo Studio 1.0. I'm Andrew Schultz, principal broker of Own Buffalo Inc. And on today's show, we're going to be discussing the anatomy of a turnover. Before we jump into that, we're going to get into our social media plugs. New episodes of Ask a Property Manager drop every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page. You can catch us live on those episodes, facebook.com/Buffalo Foreclosed Homes. Chances are, if you're watching live, you're already a fan of that page. If not, go ahead and click the like button. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/OwnBuffalo. You can find us on YouTube as well. If you miss one of these episodes, they go live on YouTube the same day. And they're also available on our Facebook page. But you can catch them on YouTube over at youtube.com. You can either search for Own Buffalo over there, or there's a direct link off of our website at ownbuffalo.com. Let's see, what else do we need to talk about? Let's talk about grabbing a free consultation call over at ownbuffalo.com. This is pretty straightforward. I'll share my desktop screen with you. I'm actually going to pull up a browser window. Very straightforward. Go to the ownbuffalo.com website, click the free 30-minute consultation button, and it drops you right here. You can see I've got a couple of time slots open for Thursday and Friday this week, and then a few time slots open for next week as well. A little bit lighter on the time slots for next week, simply because it is the beginning of a new month, and our focus will be on rent collection. Let's see here. All that being said, let us jump back to that. Give me a second to prep my screen here. We're going to be jumping over to the anatomy presentation in just a moment. Before I get into that, I hope everybody had a Memorial Day, an enjoyable Memorial Day weekend. Buffalo basically went from winter to summer in the course of like a day. We jumped from like hoodie weather to we basically jumped from hoodie weather to air conditioning weather in one day. It was pretty crazy. Definitely not what we were expecting here in the city of Buffalo. So pretty uncommon for us to make an abrupt weather change like that, but we had a couple of them this year. Obviously, the move from winter into summer, I wouldn't say we really had much of a spring. We went from like winter into summer. Then we also had one weird day earlier this year where we were at like 60 degrees, and then it started snowing later in the day. So kind of some weird weather patterns here lately. But it was nice to see people getting outside, shaking the rust off. That's always nice to see. And now we're obviously racing towards summer, so that's good news as well. All that being said, let's jump right in here. We're going to talk about the anatomy of a turnover, and when I say the anatomy of a turnover, I'm speaking specifically about an interior turnover. We're not talking about exterior work today. That could be a whole nother episode in and of itself. And we're going to start with just the stuff that you should be looking at on every turnover in every room. And we're going to start with paint. This is pretty straightforward, but you'd be surprised the number of landlords who will gloss over that sort of a thing. If you've got chipping and peeling paint, it's a concern, and it needs to be addressed. It doesn't matter to me what the age of your house is, if it's, you know, pre-1978 where you've got a lead-based paint concern, or post-1978 construction where that's not an issue. Either way, chipping and peeling paint is a concern that needs to be addressed. No matter how you slice it, your house will last longer if you make sure that it's well maintained. It's a very straightforward fact. So making sure that your place is the paint is in good condition, that's important. Flooring, again, the same thing. If you have a carpet that has burn marks in it, you know, the most common one we see is obviously somebody decided to iron on the floor for some reason and put a hot iron onto a carpet. That's pretty common to see. If you've got big wear marks in your flooring, if you've got, and it doesn't have to be just carpet, even like a vinyl plank or something like that will have a wear pattern after a while. And you don't want to ignore that when you start to get to the point where you've worn through the actual decorative pattern. It's time to start thinking about a flooring replacement. Lighting and outlets. This is a big one. No tenant should be moving into a home unless it has all of the lights working and all of the outlets working. This is something that a lot of people tend to gloss over when they're doing a turnover. I like to make sure that, number one, we have lights in every light fixture, which is just common sense, but also that the lights match. You don't want, you know, a bright white and a daylight bulb in the same fixture. It looks weird. So Light bulbs are one of those things. You can throw them in the back of your vehicle and have them at a moment's notice. Carry a couple different varieties just in case. It's a good thing to make sure that you are keeping with you. Outlets is the thing that I really wanted to touch on here. A lot of people don't go through and check outlets between turnovers, and you would be surprised at how frequently you'll have an outlet that'll stop working and it'll just go completely unreported until the new tenant moves in and plugs something in and the outlet doesn't work. You need an outlet tester from Home Depot, Lowe's, any hardware store for probably sub $10, and it'll tell you that the outlet's working, if it's wired correctly, things like that. And a lot of times the root cause of something like that, an outlet that's not working, might be as simple as a wire came loose. But going through and checking that stuff, it just saves you return trips back to the property once a tenant has moved in and discovers things that you may have missed. So it takes maybe an extra 10 minutes to walk around the entire apartment and check the lighting and check the outlets. It's a no-brainer. Windows, doors, and locks. Windows need to open and close, and when they're open, they need to stay open. So in Buffalo, we have a lot of old housing stock, late 1800s, things like that, where you have the old school system of windows where the window will have a weight that runs up and down the inside of the window framing. A lot of times you'll lose those weights. They'll either snap off, or the ropes will get cut, or whatever the case may be. You do have a couple of options there. You can install, they make a spring that you can install that'll hold the window in place when it's open, things like that. But I mean, if it's a hazard to have a window that might come down on somebody's fingers. So your windows need to open and close, and they need to stay open when they're open, and they need to have locks on them, basic safety stuff. And a lot of the stuff we're talking about is basic safety type stuff. But it's stuff that when it goes overlooked, it turns into, post move-in work orders, and then you're sending somebody back out at an additional expense to take care of something that could have been done during the turnover for basically no added expense. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then I wanted to mention smokes and CO detectors. This is one of those things where you'll have to touch on the laws for your individual state or municipality. Here in New York, we're required to have a smoke detector and a CO detector in the hallway outside the bedrooms. We're also required to have a smoke detector inside every bedroom. And I believe we're also required one smoke and CO detector per floor. So if you've got a basement level, you'll need one there. At least, one smoke and CO on the first floor, one smoke and CO on the second floor, one smoke and CO in the attic, and then outside of the bedrooms as well. But double check your building code to see what the requirements are. A lot of places seem to be pushing to the 10-year requirement for smoke and CO detectors, the 10-year battery requirement if they're not like a hardwired unit. So that is just something to kind of keep in mind that you're going to want to make sure that you are keeping on top of. If you do have the older battery-operated units, make sure you're swapping batteries when you do your turnovers. And generally what we'll do is actually write the month and year that the battery was put in to a smoke detector. So that way when we go to swap batteries later on down the road, we can see, okay, this detector, we just changed the battery in this 2 months ago, something's wrong with the detector. Or you can tell, okay, somebody missed this detector the last time they were changing batteries, whatever the case may be. Definitely make sure that you have smoke and CO detectors. It's a very basic compliance issue, and it could save somebody's life. We've literally have had multiple instances where having smoke and CO detectors in a home has saved someone's life, especially CO detectors. One thing I will note, I don't like combination smoke and CO detectors for the simple purpose of smoke and heat rise and carbon monoxide sinks. So I want a separate carbon monoxide detector at ground level, at floor level, and then I want my smoke detector raised up higher. So we do not do the combo units. In just about every instance, you'll see that we have a separate smoke and CO detector. People have approached us and said, isn't that a waste of money to have two separate units? I don't care. It's one of those things where if it's an extra $20 to put in a separate smoke and a separate CO detector, I'd rather know that I've got the CO detection down here and the smoke detection up here, where they belong. Look at the manual. Look at the little instruction packet. It tells you exactly where you should be putting that stuff. Moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit about the mechanics here. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about here is more geared towards light maintenance. If you have a real heavy maintenance situation where you've got a furnace or a hot water tank that's not working, a central air unit that's not working, if you're not comfortable fixing that stuff, if it's outside your skill set, definitely hire somebody. But a couple of things I wanted to bring up under mechanics were the thermostat, especially if you have a digital thermostat that's programmable. No one ever thinks to change the battery in these things, and it's the most common call that we get when it comes to no heat. So knowing that the battery is fresh when the tenant moves in, generally you'll get a year, 2 years out of these thermostat batteries, as long as somebody's not adjusting the temperature up and down every 30 seconds. But just throwing that fresh battery in could save you a service call for a non-working furnace or a non-working air conditioner down the road, all because you took that extra couple of minutes of time. Definitely worth it. The other alternative, I don't love digital thermostats because it seems like tenants are bad at programming them, to be honest with you. And then we get no heat calls because of that. So more often than not, we won't even put in a digital thermostat like this. We just use the simple Honeywell round thermostats for the most part. And it's caused a lot less issues. There's no battery to replace. There's no programming that can be screwed up. If a tenant wants a special, like say a tenant wants a Nest thermostat or something like that, if they buy it, we'll install it for them. But if it's just a basic thermostat, there's very little that can go wrong in those. So that's kind of the reason that we stick with the more basic thermostats. Furnace and AC. This is more just make sure your furnace and AC run. Obviously, don't run your air conditioning unit if it's the middle of winter. That will cause some damages. But checking the filter to make sure that the filter has been swapped out. I know we just pulled. The property manager never changes the filter in his furnace, of course. I pulled my furnace filter over the weekend because I noticed that my air conditioner was struggling a little bit, and it was just disgusting. So now I have a notification on my calendar to make sure that my filters get changed on a monthly basis. And I know that there's at least one other property manager that's watching this right now who's going to send me a message later and tell me that I should be using, I think it's called Second Nature is the name of the company that does like filter deliveries, and you can set it up so there's filter deliveries for your tenants and everything else. Not a plug, not a sponsor. But I know that I'm going to get a message saying that I should be using that even for my own place, and I'm just simply not. So there it is. Hot water tank. Again, this is more just making sure that the hot water tank is functioning. Making sure that if the home's going to be vacant for a while, you can actually turn that hot water tank back to like a vacation mode to save a little bit of gas. Just make sure you turn it back up again before the tenant moves in. Some hot water tanks can be flushed as well. Actually, I think all hot water tanks can be flushed. You may want to investigate doing that. I did see a picture. I should have put it on this presentation. I saw a picture earlier this week of the sludge that builds up in the bottom of a hot water tank. It's pretty gross. Like, if you look at there's a layer, like, and I'm not exaggerating, it was a layer about like that of just like grit and line debris and stuff like that just sits in the bottom of the hot water tank, and over time that reduces the effectiveness of the hot water tank, and eventually it will kill the hot water tank because your heating elements will just burn out on it, and then you're basically stuck replacing the tank. So that is something to keep in mind. Flush your hot water tank if that's something that you need to do. Otherwise, just make sure that it's in good operable condition. And the breaker panel. I always go through the breaker panel and make sure that all of the breakers are on the way that they're supposed to be. If there's anything that's tripped in the panel, I'm looking to find out what caused it to trip. If there's something that's just flat out off, I'm looking to see, okay, where does this run and why is it in the off position? Don't just go flipping things on willy-nilly. Make sure you know what they're attached to. But that is something to keep in mind. Check your breaker panel, especially if you're going back and checking outlets and lighting and something's not working and you can't figure out why. The next spot should probably be your breaker panel. Moving on for mechanics, I wanted to talk specifically about 2 rooms. We're going to start with the kitchen, and then we're going to move into the bathroom. And the first thing I wanted to talk about here in the kitchen is the plumbing. I mean, obviously, this is pretty straightforward. When you do a turnover, you're going to want to make sure that water comes out the faucet and water goes down the drain. And any deviation from that is kind of an issue. So making sure that your plumbing is working the way that it's supposed to. If you've got a slow drain, making sure that that drain is cleaned up. And a lot of times in the kitchen, it's as simple as just pulling the trap. There's usually some food debris or something caught in there that just needs to be cleared out. So making sure that your plumbing is working properly, obviously very important. We're also checking for leaks in this instance. A lot of times you won't notice a leak, but it could be happening underneath the sink. So what we're doing is checking not just the supply lines, the lines running to the faucet, but also the drain line to make sure that you're not getting any leaks on that. Super important, and it will definitely save the cabinet, the base cabinet, so that you're not ruining it with just having water sitting there for an extended period of time. Moving on to appliances. If you are supplying appliances with your home, every component on the appliance should work. And I've had this argument before too. People who have ice makers and freezers, but the ice maker doesn't work, they wanna leave the appliance in place as is and just say, well, the ice maker doesn't work. No, fix the ice maker or remove the ice maker. Don't have a non-working component in your appliance. It makes you look, like you're not, if you're not going to take care of that, it makes it look like you're not going to take care of other maintenance issues. Or you're just going to continue to defer things until you absolutely have to take care of them. Make sure you get one shot at a first impression when someone moves into an apartment or a home. Make sure that you're giving them every opportunity to give you a good review. So making sure that your appliances work, all of the components on your appliances work, all of your stove burners work, the broiler works, the oven works. If you've got an over-the-range microwave like we do in these photos, making sure that the microwave works, making sure that the vent hood underneath the microwave works. If it's equipped, most of them are. If you don't have an over-the-range microwave, maybe there's just a range hood that you need to double check and make sure that it works, or swap the filter in, things like that. We talked about the refrigerator already. We talked about the stove, the microwave. Dishwasher is another common one. I'm not saying you've got to bring your dirty dishes from home and run a full load, but at least run a dry run through that dishwasher and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to. Make sure that the arms are spinning the way that they should and spraying water, and that the dishwasher is draining. If you're having an issue with your dishwasher draining, usually you'll find that it's a clog in the filter basket, a little strainer down in the bottom of the dishwasher that will catch like food debris before it goes into your drain. Double checking that to make sure that's clear will generally resolve just about any dishwasher drainage issue. And then if you've got a garbage disposal, making sure that the garbage disposal is working and that it's clean. Good way to do that is to run some just ice through it, no problem. Very straightforward. But make sure that your appliances work in the way that they're supposed to. Drawers and cabinets. This is pretty straightforward too. Making sure that all of your drawers open and close the way that they're supposed to. Making sure that the bottoms aren't damaged in some way. Over time, especially if somebody's got a lot of weight in a drawer, you'll start to see like the face pull away from the actual drawer itself. Usually a couple quick turns of a screwdriver will resolve that. Same thing with loose handles. That's a 10-second repair. But it's little things like that when you don't do them, it drops the overall quality of the home. So little things like that. Drawers and cabinets, making sure that they're operating, making sure they're clean, making sure all the hinges and drawer pulls and handles and everything are in place. GFI considerations. So this goes along with the electric. I don't know if can't really see it in these photos, but if you look next to the microwave in the lower left-hand photo, there is a GFI outlet there that is plugged into. And basically what that does is when you're in New York State, I believe it's within 6 foot of a source of water, so you've got the sink there, you have to have a ground fault interrupter circuit so that if something happens and your blender falls into the running sink for some reason, that outlet will detect that the current has changed because it's no longer flowing current through the lines, it's now flowing it through the water, and it'll shut that outlet off. They have a test and a reset button on them. That's how you can tell if it's a GFI outlet or not. And keep in mind that sometimes these GFIs do daisy chain out to other outlets. So if you have an outlet on both sides of the sink, for instance, one might have a GFI on it, the other may not. But in most instances, what you'll probably find is that one outlet without the GFI is actually chained on after the one with the GFI and is still protected. That's just something to consider, the GFIs and things like that. If you don't have GFIs in those wet areas, that is something that you might want to look into taking care of. I know that in New York State, it is a code requirement to have those GFIs within, I believe, 6 feet of a source of water. So that is something to keep in mind. And then I wanted to talk about the bathroom specifically. And I wanted to start with the shower. There's a couple things I want to touch on with this. In the shower, it's pretty straightforward. You've got your shower head, which should be functional and clean. A lot of times you'll get buildup on a shower head that can easily be cleaned off with some CLR and an old toothbrush or something like that, just scrubbing it off. You don't necessarily have to go out and replace it with a $70, $90, $100 shower head. A lot of times you can just clean up what you already have in place. Another thing I wanted to mention is having a shower bar, and a shower bar, a shower curtain, and rings. Most places just have a firmly attached bar. It's mounted to the wall, and you never have to worry about the bar. Some places they skip that step, and you're using like a spring-loaded tension shower bar. Fine, it is what it is. But if you're in a position where you're doing a turnover, make sure there's a shower bar there, whether it be the spring-loaded one, or the better option would be the hard-mounted one, the one that's actually mounted to the wall. Make sure that you have a shower bar there. Make sure that there are rings on the shower bar, and make sure that there's, at the very least, a liner. You could do this entire project for under $20, and you would be surprised at the number of times, somebody moves in, they want to hop in the shower right away. They may not have unpacked their shower curtain and stuff yet. So just that little nicety of being able to hop in the shower goes a long way. So it also protects your floor. I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't have their shower curtain up yet and decides that they want to try to hop in the shower and, oh, I'm just not going to splash water out of the shower, you laugh, but it's happened. We've seen tenants that have tried to do it, and suddenly the entire bathroom is flooded. So, it's one of those little projects that makes a big difference, in my opinion. It also goes along with leaving a roll of toilet paper. I personally think it's good luck to leave a roll of toilet paper for the next tenant. We try to make sure that we accommodate that whenever we're doing a turnover. Sometimes we forget, but we always try to leave a roll of toilet paper. Imagine how frustrating it is to walk into a bathroom and just not have access to toilet paper when that's what your current need is. It's always a good idea to just have an extra roll of toilet paper kicking around in your apartment when you're doing your turnover. Again, it's something that we kind of keep in the car along with light bulbs and batteries and stuff like that. Toilet, making sure that your toilet's not running. A good way to test if your toilet is leaking from the tank into the bowl is to drop a little bit of food coloring in and then come back in an hour or two and see if there's any water, any of the food coloring has made its way from the tank down into the bowl. If you do see that, that's a good indication that you need to do a little bit of preventative maintenance on your toilet in the form of new flapper, maybe a new fill valve if you've got a little bit of an issue there. But definitely double check to make sure your toilet is good. Change your toilet seat on every turnover. The number of landlords that I've seen that don't change the toilet seat on every turnover is baffling. Again, this is a $15 item, a $10 item if you really want to be ultra cheap about it. For sanitary purposes alone, change the toilet seat on every turn. It's just do it. Like, it's not even an argument. Sink, and this is, again, it's one of those things. Make sure that water comes out of the faucet, make sure water goes down the drain, make sure there's no leaks. One thing I do want to mention when it comes to sinks, and this is more of a if you're dealing with perhaps like a Section 8 agency or something like that, you'll find that a lot of those agencies will check under the sink for gaps around the pipes. So both the pipe coming out of the wall to go up to the sink, and then the pipes going back down in underneath into the wall for the drain. They want those to be tight, as tight to the wall as possible. And what I mean by that is they don't want to see any kind of a gap around those lines. I know that we've had Section 8 inspections in the past where everything has gone, absolutely perfect, until we got to a bathroom and looked under the sink, and there was a little bit of a gap around where a line was coming through the back of a vanity, and they literally failed us on the inspection because that could be considered an area of rodent infestation. Was how it was worded on the Section 8 inspection, which I thought was ludicrous, but whatever. A can of great stuff or a tube of caulk or something like that to close the gaps around those pipes. Now you have nothing to worry about. I think it's a code compliance issue there as well. So very straightforward. It's an easy repair. It's one of those things that could hang you up down the road, but it's very easy to just deal with it when you are doing the turnover, and then it's never an issue after that. Medicine cabinet and vanity. This is pretty straightforward, making sure that the medicine cabinet doesn't have a bunch of leftovers from the previous tenant, making sure that the vanity is in good shape, that your top is not damaged in any way, that the drawers are working, and things of that nature. Pretty straightforward. And then, again, exhaust fan and GFI considerations. Not every bathroom has an exhaust fan. We've gotten to the point where we try to install an exhaust fan every time we do like a bathroom renovation. We try to make sure that an exhaust fan goes in. We also link that exhaust fan to generally we've done it one of two ways. We've done them where the exhaust fan is tied directly to the main overhead light switch. The benefit of that is as soon as you walk into the bathroom, the exhaust fan is on. The drawback to that is as soon as you walk out of the bathroom, if you turn that light off, your fan also turns off. So what we've also done in the past is set the fans up on a timer so that if somebody's walking in and getting ready to take a hot shower, they can hit the timer for 60 minutes. That gives them plenty of time to take their shower, and then it also lets the fan continue to run, continue to exhaust that moist air, for however long after their shower, up to that 60-minute mark, and then it automatically will shut itself off so that it's not running all day. So that is something to kind of keep in mind as a potential thing that should be considered. And then also you've got ground fault interrupter considerations in the bathroom as well. Pretty much unless you have a massive bathroom, pretty much everything in your bathroom is going to be within that 6-foot radius of a source of water. So you're going to need GFIs in the bathroom for sure. Guys, that pretty much wraps things up for us on the anatomy of a turnover. I hope that was beneficial to you guys. I will probably do another one of those in the future, talking more about exterior concerns and maybe delving a little bit more into the interior concerns as well. Guys, I do appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. Thank you so much for watching. We love producing Ask a Property Manager, and you can always help us to improve. You can drop a question in the comments either on Facebook or YouTube, and your question may be featured in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed this content, or if I brought some value to your day, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. YouTube and Facebook both push videos based on community feedback, and we want to help as many people as possible find us and find the information that we're putting out there. Next episode will be next week, June 3rd. Can't believe we're moving into June already. June 3rd, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be doing a question and answer session. So I'll be picking some questions that are submitted to us, as well as pulling some questions from the community as well. If you guys have a question, drop it in the comments, and it'll be picked up for next week's episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.